conversation about the black and white, right?
Yeah.
It's all right. I have a feeling
Everyone will just wonder.
Yeah.
What's wrong with Gordon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have an old school PC, right? I couldn't afford the PC with the color.
So here we have Gordon Barfield from 1950, and we're gonna just start. But Gordon, just tell us about you started to talk about stuff, and we're like, let's hit record because we want to hear your backstory and your whole your career evolution, life evolution. So
yeah, it's interesting, Dan. I come at it from a little bit different perspective. I like to think about myself as being a non-typical dentist on a number of different counts, and I think my background tends to begin to tell that story a little bit, right? So I was a guy who got into college late because I didn't see the value in going to college. Really, I was like, let's go to work, let's jump in and make some money. I was freewheeling at that age, 18, 19, 20, 21, having a lot of fun, not really seeing the value in the books, right? And I think, you hear those stories. That's not unusual to hear. But I got married at a young age, and I realized that if you're going to raise a family, buy some furniture, put some food in the fridge, right? You better have a good job to do that. And so I kind of, from a financial perspective, decided to make the jump into college after thinking college was not something to do at all. And when I did that, I had this light bulb go off of maturity that said, hey, guy, you got to do some work here. So I jumped right into school, and I did my undergraduate at Roanoke College in Salem, Virginia, in about 3 years. I dove right in and really worked my butt off and got through the degree pretty quickly. Got my degree in biology and chemistry. While I was doing that, I took an active interest in thinking, well, what am I going to do with this degree? What the hell do you do with something like that? You go be a teacher, veterinarian, work in a zoo, who knows? Maybe a microbiology lab, right? But I landed on this crazy idea of dentistry. One of my best friends, who was a classmate of mine at Roanoke, had been an emergency room nurse. He worked in a trauma department. And we took a friendship up while we were in college, and we spent a lot of time in the career center at Roanoke College. And conversations went like this: which careers are the best? Which ones pay the most? Where can we get some value out of this money we're paying for this, this bachelor's degree, right? And so we actually both ended up landing on dentistry for a number of different reasons. He was headed down the medical school path, but he had identified that in working in the trauma department, that it was really hella hard work, right? All hours of the night, weekends, anytime a patient needed him, right? That's emergency room work. And he didn't really want that. So he identified that maybe dentistry was a different way to go. And we landed on dentistry at about the same time as being, looks like a really good career, right? You have autonomy, you make good money, you can run your own shop. You want to take off for 2 months, take off for 2 months. Nobody's going to tell you not to. You just have to, you have to be responsible to your patients and your checkbook. But at the end of the day, you can make whatever choices you want to. And I think it's one of the things that actually led me to dentistry, right? Because you really do have a lot of flexibility with this career. So we went charging off to dental school. He went off to the Medical College of Virginia up near Cam, or where Cam used to be. Mm-hmm. And I went down to UNC Chapel Hill and charged through dental school at the same rate I charged through undergrad, which was, I want to get through this as fast and as well as I can because I want to get out and start making money. So I did that. I did it too quickly, and I got a little bit burned out with schooling, although I as many of us do, right? We're high achievers. Oftentimes the folks that are sitting in dental school classes are the highest achievers out there. And we did that, but it burned us out emotionally, my wife and I at the time. And so my decision point after dental school was to join the United States Air Force because I had no money. I went through dental school on ramen noodles. It was that kind of story, right? I worked part-time jobs. My wife worked part-time jobs just to be able to pay the apartment rent. And I'd call my mom and dad every once in a while and I'd say, can you guys send me $50 and I'll make it last the entire semester? It was really that bad. But the United States Air Force offered that opportunity of you can have instant income while maybe you're deciding what you want your path to be, right? So I took a 3-year term in the Air Force, including a GPR at Barksdale Air Force Base down in Louisiana. And I did all the things you would do in a hospital-based GPR: trauma dentistry, pathology, medically compromised patients, as well as the full scope of general practice, and enjoyed that. And it was good for me because I think as a young male, I need a little more structure, and the military brought that to me. So I'm thankful for that part of my journey, although I wouldn't want to do a military career. 3 years was enough for me. There was a little more structure than I actually wanted, but I gained a lot of experience in dentistry there, as well as a lot of life experience. I was able to put in a pretty clear focus where I should be within the scope of society, right? Military will do that to you. You know, you go into the military thinking that I'm going to do things my way, come hell or high water, and you know pretty quickly that it doesn't work that way in the world. So it was a valuable experience for me. Reconnected with my buddy from undergrad. He was finishing at MCV. He had joined a large group practice in Salem, Virginia, which is where we were from. And he says, listen, we have one of our 5 doctors retiring. Would you think about coming up here and joining us? I didn't think much about it. I wasn't sure what I was going to do after the military commitment. I knew it was coming to an end, though. So I went and talked to him, and I found that this concept of group solo practice, and that's what it was. It was a five-member practice, each practicing individually, but under an LLC, where we could share expenses, you know, have collegiality, professional collaboration, so forth and so on, coverage for emergencies, that kind of thing, was actually a pretty good practice model. And so I dove in as an associate and associated for about 2 years there before I bought in as a partner into what I now know was one of the most amazing and positive practice models out there for dentistry. We were really successful. We had great patients, a great staff of about almost 30 in the office. We were working when we wanted to, as we wanted to, with full independence. Very successful from a practice model perspective as well as a financial perspective. And life was good. You know, you buy your homes, you buy your cars, your boats, you go to Europe, all those fun things, right? But about 5 years in, Cameron's chuckling. She knows part of this story. About 5 years in, the little guy on my shoulder who's standing here talking to me, right? It actually occurred earlier than 5 years, but I'll put the 5-year mark on it because I think that's when it became poignant for me. The little guy on the shoulder says, "Are you really happy doing this? You have all the trappings. Everything is, you know, people tell you that your life is perfect and you don't want for anything, but are you really happy doing what you're doing?" And the little guy told me that your stomach is upset when you go to work. Why is that? What's the reason for that? Why are you anxious when you're driving your car to your office, this supposedly perfect office with perfect patients, with plenty of money, with a wonderful staff and amazing colleagues? I had the best partners in the world, all age ranges, right? And that little guy spoke to me for a number of years, actually, a number of years, before he got so loud that I sat up and listened and became into a part of my career, part of my life, where I could actually take a decision and do something about that unsettled feeling, that anxiety, that is this the right thing? Is this the right career for me? Am I was born to do, right? And I took action mid-career with one of the most amazing dental practices in my pocket. I decided that it wasn't good enough. Wasn't good enough. And everyone in my world told me that I had gone off the deep end. You're going to do what? Why? Are you serious? They tried to talk me out of it. Lots of them did. Fortunately, I was in a practice that was so well structured, I was able to take that decision, give my partner 6 months notice, and sell out fully. We had contractual obligation that they would buy out, no problem. It was over time. It was a structured buyout, but it was solid as a rock. And so that gave me the confidence to pull the trigger. If that weren't there, if the relationship and the practice were weaker, I might have felt a little bit more of the handcuffs, the golden handcuffs, than I felt. But I was confident that I would get bought out of my practice share. So that meant that I could survive a transition, right? I could actually do it financially, which led to, the freedom of being able to do it emotionally. So I decided to do that, and I sold out and charged off to the University of Nevada across the country to do ortho. And I want to back up for just a second. The little guy was talking to me and he says, this is not the right thing for you to do. The dentistry stuff is not your forte. You're not happy doing this. You should be doing something different in life. And I considered what those things in life that are different might be. Building apartments, doing dental consulting, becoming an entrepreneur of many different characterizations, flipping real estate. The list goes on and on, as you might expect. There were a lot of different things that I thought that I might do other than dentistry. But after talking to the little guy long enough, I landed on not throwing away the dental experience and the dental career. And I thought that was an important piece of my decision making. Don't throw away all this work. Don't throw away this experience. Maybe leverage it somewhere else, right? And I had always thought that, being an orthodontist was kind of a cool thing. Orthodontists wear golf shirts. They don't have to worry too much about Novocaine and drills and MB2 canals and all of those fun things, right? And so I charged off to the University of Nevada across the country, sold all of my worldly goods, and boxed up family and moved to Nevada for a few years to study ortho. And I did that. It was interesting going back to ortho as a 45-year-old dentist. I was the second oldest ortho resident in the United States. The year I entered, which was 2007, there was one person who was 52. So I was the second oldest ortho resident in the country. And all of my classmates were straight A dentists, largely right out of school, that were about 26 or so years of age. They were young, So I stuck out like a sore thumb. I had to do a lot of upskilling. I didn't know how to run Microsoft Office, as an example, right? What's a spreadsheet? We had to build PowerPoints during that residency, right? To do case presentations. All the young kids could do it like that. I struggled for months and months to be able to build a simple PowerPoint and had to call them in to help me do that. So that was unique. But we got through that and had some interesting times during the residency, including some relationship challenges, some family challenges that were very difficult to navigate for me during that time. But also, like the previous experiences, taught me many things about myself and made me a better person for having gone through the challenges, and especially going through them while you're in a residency program, right? Doing a lot of academic work, a lot of things that require a lot of your time. To have personal issues during the course of something like that are very tough for any of us, I think, but made me better. And then I got out of the residency and I decided, well, what are you going to do now? It's the next decision point. Where are you headed? One of the instructors in the program is a guy named Brian Sharzan from Buffalo, New York. And he was on the faculty at the time. And he called me after I'd finished and I had moved back to Virginia after the residency, not knowing quite where we were headed yet. And he says, listen, I'm thinking about getting out of teaching. What do you know about ortho practices in the southeastern United States? His family was from Raleigh. His parents live in Raleigh. And I said, I don't know. We think about them, and we chatted a few times on the phone, and we kind of landed on this idea of, well, I'm thinking about leaving teaching, could we partner up and maybe go acquire some offices and run a small DSO, OSO group practice kind of thing? And we ultimately did that. We both came to Atlanta. We purchased 6 offices. 3 were in the Atlanta area, Athens area. 3 were out in rural areas of Georgia, more farming country, you'd say, in smaller communities. So our practice was composed of 2 types of patient bases, right? And they were very, very unique and very different. Here in metropolitan Atlanta, we had people from all over the world, all different educational levels, but also all different expectations of what dentistry is, right? And how they respond to dentistry and dental recommendations. And then out in the more rural areas, the farming areas, we had different patient bases. They were more trusting. They were accepting of treatment plans, that type of thing. They communicated on a different level. So we had sort of this mixed bag practice of where we had to actually shift our approach based upon where we were. And Brian and I would actually swap communities on the weekends. One of us would tend to the offices in Atlanta for a week, while the second one was tending to the offices in the rural areas, including some driving and some long flights. We were commuting, and we had a townhouse stay in the rural areas, and in Atlanta we had our homes. And we would meet on the weekends to do strategic business meetings if we needed to. And we did that for 6 years, I think 6 years, until Brian decided that he and his wife didn't necessarily like Georgia. They wanted to go back out west, and he actually went back into teaching. We sold half of the offices to Smile Doctors, who Cameron is familiar with, the largest ortho OSO out there. Sold to Dana Fender and to Scott Law, the founders. And then that left me really to manage the other practices here in the Atlanta area when Brian left. Now, we had 3 offices going, and I couldn't do them really all myself. So my wife, who's a dentist and is ortho trained in Brazil, helped me with managing the offices for the next, I guess it's 5 years or so. Until in 2022, the little guy started talking to me again. And he had been chatting with me all along, right? He never stopped talking. But
I think by the way, during that time, I think the little guy on your shoulder jumped to my shoulder, and then at one point jumped to Cameron's shoulder, and then came back to you in 2020.
Just kept going.
The same guy, isn't it? It's the same guy. It's interesting too. Yeah, for sure. And sometimes they talk louder than others, right? But he told me, he said, are you really happy doing this? It is cool. Orthodontic practice is amazing. When I compare the two, they're so different. But I still was having that little voice going, are you happy doing this? There were things about being responsible for the entire business, being responsible for every patient, being responsible for taking care of the staff in all of the ways that we know that we do, that were just darn hard. They were emotionally draining, physically draining, mentally draining. And so the little guy got louder, and he, over time, convinced me that this was not where I should be. At that time, I was so far down the timeline, right? I was retirement age 61, that I began to think about the prospect of retirement as being part of what the next step was, and what type of retirement that be, or what it would look like. And I decided to pull the plug. We had talked to DSOs. I thought about associating with the DSO, affiliating, and then working 3 to 5 more years for them, that kind of thing, but decided that wouldn't help me get away from the anxiety and challenges that clinical dentistry was bringing to my plate, and decided that selling completely out was the thing to do. Now, my wife thought I was crazy again. how are we going to put food on the table? We'll be on the street. We won't be able to survive. We're going to be beggars. We'll be the people with the shopping cart on the corner. And it took a while to convince her that that wouldn't happen. You know, we had a good practice to sell, and you know, if anything, I'm a relatively resourceful person. I can look for things to do and places to find opportunities. So she finally became convinced and allowed me to sell the offices. She's still practicing now, right? She still works, but I don't work clinically anymore. When I sold the office in 2022 and then took about 90 days to recover from the 30-year journey in dentistry, I realized that it was not only the right thing to do, but I had waited way too long to do that, to pull that plug. And understand today, in hindsight, that I should have done it back in what would have been 1993 to 1997, that first year period, where the voice began to talk, began to tell me that all the signs were there that this wasn't the right fit. And if anything comes out of this discussion, it's that bullet point.
Let me interject for 1 second, if you don't
Yeah.
mind. So that, if you don't mind, Camden, I'm just going to ask. So
Go
that
for it.
point, that moment, not moment, but that period of time where the little guy on your shoulder was talking about, you know, that initial point when you started practicing and you realized that this isn't going so well. Do you think that, because I think we all have a shared experience here to some extent, and do you feel that you were staying in clinical, like you still stayed in that clinical lane, like even though you got out of your practice, you still went into ortho clinically? Did you feel like how much of that was a fear-based decision versus a, you know, I still want to do clinical decision? Like you said, in retrospect, I mean, hindsight's 2020, and like, look, we all evolve. I'm just saying, like, that power, I think we've all experienced it, that power that the work, like the sunk costs fallacy, you know, that we've put so much into this, and, you know, we have to stay in it at all costs because of the previous price we've paid through education and everything we've done. It's like, you know, it's not just what do I do next, it's that I have to justify what I did before. Like, how much of that was that versus, you know, I just thought I really wanted to still do clinically? Like,
Dan, it's an awesome question. And for me, 100% of it was, I knew that I didn't want to stay practicing clinically deep down inside. And so my description is I copped out. I looked in the mirror and I copped out. And I continued on a path that I knew wasn't right for many different reasons. And I justified it with the golden handcuffs.
right.
I mean, when I look in the mirror every morning, I'm looking at a person who copped out and essentially, not to put too fine a point on it, but did it for the money. The money's great. There's a
I mean,
comfort there.
I would be so hard on yourself to say you copped. I mean, you had responsibilities in life. It's not like you're like I'm just a scared little kitten in the corner. You had responsibilities. You had things to do. It mattered. I mean, making money matters.
Yeah, no, I think so. But I think also, and this is really, I think the power in the discussion is that we matter as well. Is money more or equally important to our self-being and self-worth? That's a question. It's one that we often have to answer for ourselves, and we're all going to be tasked with that at some point.
Right.
And for me, the ultimate calculus, if you will, was I took the wrong decision. You live with that, and I'm perfectly okay with it, because as I'm going to describe in a moment, it's led to a place that is abundantly full of sunshine. So that just becomes a chapter in the book, if you will, right? It becomes a part of the experience and the timeline. It becomes a learning point to be utilized into the future. But for me, I knew that I didn't want to stay in clinical work, and I knew the reasons. but yet I made a decision that because of the investment, because of the uh, protection,
Yeah, security.
yeah, thank you, Dan. That's exactly what the word I was looking for. I'm sorry. The
No.
security that was being afforded by being a clinician, running your own practice, your own business, that it wasn't the right decision to get out at whatever moment I didn't get out. But in hindsight, I know now that I should have. And the reason I should have is that I should have done it for me. I should have been a little bit more selfish. Being selfish can be good. We have to be true to ourselves. There's a reason why when I came down here Thursday morning through all the storms in Atlanta, it was a bumpy ride down here yesterday morning. But there's a reason why they say when the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on yourself first, because you're not going to save anybody if you are not around. You're
Great
not
point.
also going to be good for anybody if you're not healthy. And that includes everyone in your sphere, your business partners, your patients, your spouse, your kids, your family. The list goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Each one of us has to be true to ourselves, first and foremost, not from a selfish perspective, but from the perspective of understanding where we fit into a team, the world, and bringing, I think, to the table the best version of ourselves. And so for that period of my journey, from where I first identified this, one second, Cam, I know you're chomping at the bit. I love it. I love it. From that first moment where I identified this thing and to the point at which I pulled the trigger, right? I sensed that as just a little bit of a lost opportunity. I could have done better in many, many different parts of my world if I had pulled the trigger sooner. All right, Cam, tell me I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I have two things. One is just, and this came up before, and I feel like I know what the answer is, but I'd just like to ask it anyways. You know, with the voice in our head, sometimes can be an inner gremlin, right? So it can sometimes just be a voice that likes to create problems, that just likes to have a dialogue.
Yeah.
There's also that. And then there's the concept of we have intuition, you know, we have truth. Yep. And so, I would love for you to touch on that. And then I would love to hear where you're at now and maybe how, like you've described it as sunshine. So like, how do you know in your body that it's different? What aspects? So this would be great.
Love it. For me, I've always been an analytical person, and I'm a very, very, very strong realist. So the part about the gremlins, a voice like confusing you, getting you to think in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, don't really apply to me. I've never had that sense or that feeling ever in my life. But I have been attached strongly to my gut feeling, right? We know the gut connection, right? It's very strong. And so the ability to sense emotional turmoil, emotional things has been a strong suit of mine throughout life. And so when I began to understand how that related to where I was within my practice career, I almost had to dull that down, tone it down in a way, turn the volume down on it, because it was very real. But on the other hand, I was balancing, wow, this is like, and I was the only one in my family ever to go to an advanced degree, right? I come from a middle-class family. I had to balance that with, gosh, you're doing so well in life compared to so many other people. How could it be bad, right? And then you do that analysis, and I came to the conclusion that the emotional part of the intuition, if you will, was more important. That was the voice I needed to listen to. It was incredibly powerful, trying to tell me something about myself. I needed to listen. And ultimately I did, and I'm glad that I did overall, notwithstanding the fact that I think there was some lost opportunity in that time when I actually knew the challenge was there, and then later took action on it. Now, fast forward to 2022 and selling the offices and getting out of dentistry. We've been fortunate enough to travel the world, my wife and I, and so we love travel. We did some of that for about 6 months or so. I took a 90-day, what I call a catharsis, or a break from clinical dentistry, and I recovered from it. And it does feel like that to me. It feels like I had to recover from 30 plus years of mental, physical, and emotional burden that dentistry put on me, but also acknowledging that dentistry gave me so much. And there's a list we could go on forever, and we'll do that on another episode, right? We'll get on here and we'll talk about all the benefits, right? Because it's not like it's a one-sided story at all. So I was able to, in that period of time, sort of refocus around what am I interested in. We had the opportunity, because we had sold the business to, pardon me for the noise in the back lobby of the hotel here. I was able to actually think to myself, what would I do if I had the ability to just do anything I wanted to do? And I was in that part of life. I had the ability to do literally anything I wanted to do. Maria was still practicing. She still is today. But I'm now, quote unquote, retired. But I was way too young, way too healthy, way too curious to sit around and do nothing. I can do that for 60 to 90 days, but that's about it. So I dove into school. Believe it or not, I went back to school again. I had always had an interest in data analytics, data science, numbers, things like that, because I was always a tech adopter in my practices. And so I dove into online learning, Coursera work, right? University of Michigan, Google, Alphabet, IBM, and I got certificates in data science and data analytics, applied artificial intelligence, yada, yada, yada. And I spent many months doing that, and it was super fulfilling, super fun. I learned to code in Python, to run Tableau, visualizations and Power BI, all the cool stuff. But the little guy was still on my shoulder. He was still there, and he was still chirping at me. And he was saying, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit here and collect up online certificates in education? I mean, is that enough? And so, no, he told me again, I needed to leverage my experience in dentistry and my background. And could I take that experience and find some spot to land in the tech sector, which is sort of where my interest was, right? That was at the core. I kind of felt I wanted to be involved in tech because it's a fascinating area to be in. And so I started reaching out to dentists on LinkedIn that I could identify as being in the tech sector. And that led to some Zoom meetings with one of the dentists who is on our team here at Overjet, who works as a product manager. And she ultimately told me that, yes, you can be a clinical dentist in the tech sector. We need clinicians. Technology is building products for medicine and healthcare at an astounding rate. And in general, there's a lack of clinician involvement, particularly as the logarithmic rate of growth steepens. The clinicians are trailing because they're not joining the teams as quickly as technical oriented people are. So I joined Overjet as what they called a clinical manager. I'm one of 13 dentists on this team, full-time dentists, and we give the clinical voice to the builders of artificial intelligence technology, a transformative technology that's going to change dentistry more than any transformation that I've gone through in my 33 years in dentistry. It'll be the most transformative thing ever to occur. And I think what Cameron was getting ready to ask about is the sunshine part. And that is that I find myself at this point of my career, I know that I've treated and helped tens of thousands of dental patients and orthodontic patients. I've had wonderful colleagues. I've had wonderful relationships with patients, staff, other providers, colleagues like you guys. But the work I do today touches millions of people around the world. I'm involved with the building process of this technology. I also interact with clinicians every day, from DSOs, organizations in dentistry, individual practitioners, but my efforts in this company ultimately touch millions of dental patients here in the United States and Canada, and soon to be in Europe, Australia, the rest of the world over time. So the sunshine comes from understanding that at this point in my career, this late stage of my career, I found the spot where I can have the impact through a combination of career changes, failures, successes, history, experience. I've fallen into that chair where my contribution is critical for helping people, also fulfills me. Boom. I'm sitting in the sun.
That's incredible. I just find it, I mean, your story is extremely interesting, but I just find it so fascinating how, like, we pretty much, like, I guess we're probably separated in age, probably equal amounts of years, more or less. I assume, I don't know, but I think we all have gone through the same kind of, in various, more or less, like we've kind of, it's like the same steps and the same kind of struggles and the same thought processes, and like even the reactions to some extent. Like you got degree, like I went to public health, but the same idea, like expanding your knowledge, and I think the keyword's leveraging. Like when you said leveraging your experience, I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that you can leverage your experience. I think when you go to dental school, dentistry itself is so myopic. You're like not only looking at someone's body, you're looking at their mouth. I mean, you're just in this small space physically, and then mentally you sort of are too, and you kind of get stuck there. And I think that's part of that must be like some kind of mental loop or a mental pathway that happens, that you feel like you're stuck in this place and you can't break out of it, and you can't leverage it like you did, like you said.
100%. And
very interesting.
Dan, I think that brings up a really interesting point, and an important one. It circles back to the beginning of the conversation when I told you that I'm not a typical dentist. You can see that in the story, right? My story is not one that you're going to hear a lot of times within the dental community. And one of the things that I first identified when I got into dentistry was that persona, the stereotypical dentist. And I really had, the little guy was telling me, the guy on the shoulder was saying to me repeatedly, I don't really want to be that persona. I've had so many wonderful colleagues, extremely smart and talented colleagues, that identify solely as a dentist. They don't have an identity out of being a dentist. They derive their personal value, if you will, from the occupational code that's attached to them. I never, ever, ever wanted to be that. And I never found myself going down that path. I was always skirting the edges of, why are you so different than the other guys at the meeting? Why do you have these odd ideas about dentistry and dental care, right? So it was interesting to go through that thought process from a philosophical and psychological standpoint. And I consider it now to be one of the most valuable things that's ever occurred to me in life. I've had lots of experiences that were tremendously valuable, but this was one that led to an incredible amount of growth for me, internal, personal growth, that I'm really thankful for having walked that path. Now, and I'm 63 now. I'll be 63 in next week is my birthday, actually.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We sing on the podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But I feel like, it's weird. I feel better now at this stage of life at 63, when most people are thinking about slowing down, sitting on the porch, getting gray hair, all this kind of stuff. I've got all this crazy energy. You can sense that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like out here building this stuff, and I go out and I travel the country talking for the company. I speak on AI. I'm helping these really impressive software engineers build this stuff. And I'm having an impact now at this stage of my career that it's finally come full circle. I'm doing something that matters.
Yeah. No, it's
To
funny.
you.
It's funny. I forgot where I was listening or reading to something, and they say like different parts of your career, and I think all of us to some extent we're at that wisdom part. They call it the wisdom part of your career, where you're imparting your wisdom onto other people, but you're doing it in a way that's entrepreneurial, which is awesome. I mean, I think that we all kind of like feel like that, and that's just the vibe of the world now, that you can do things, with not a lot of resources, right? And or being part of something else. I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's kind of interesting about it all. I just had a cement cloud hit me, guys. I'm sorry about that. You ever have it happen when the cement cloud comes by, hit you in the head, and the thought that you had just
yeah. It comes to you though. It comes to you eventually.
Eventually, it comes back. But it's fun to be in this position at this stage of life, and I've been very, very blessed to have had this journey, and it's I didn't plan it. It wasn't my grand plan to do this and to be here. I fell into this. I was very, very fortunate. That's the thought I had. Very fortunate to have fallen into it. And I don't take that for granted. I evangelize this every day. This conversation that we're having, by the way, is one that I have very often with people in lots of different settings. As an example, including when I go and speak on artificial intelligence for the company at meetings. Oftentimes I have this conversation with people, and I feel like one of the things that I can offer, or maybe it's kind of strange to think about it, but is my mission, is to let folks in our space know, our colleagues know, that there are lots of opportunities and places that we can land to contribute. And many times they're atypical. Many times they're things that we would have never thought of before. And so the ability to be open to all types of settings, all types of opportunities, all types of ideas it's a bedrock of what we all really should strive for in terms of our humanity. And that would be the same for anybody in any profession. It just so happens we're talking about tooth fixers.
Right. Tooth mechanics.
Yeah.
Tooth mechanics.
Beautiful.
No, it's I'm passionate about it. I've threatened to write a book about this, as I told Cameron one time. But Camden, I'm sorry, I've done that more than once, haven't I, Camden?
It's very common. So I just fine.
Right. I threatened to write a book about this, but I just can't put the pen to paper and get started on it. I've always got these other projects going that keep me busy. So, but one day I'd love to do that. I'd love to put down these ideas on paper and to be able to,
I have one suggestion for you, Gordon, because I'm the same way. Like, I'm like, oh, I always have ideas and I'm writing them down and the ideas, and I'm like, oh, I can make a book. It's hard to like do anything long form, but you know what I've been doing a little bit here and there is I'll write an article. And I'll just like,
amazing.
I'll put it, so you get an idea out, and then one day, if you want to consolidate it all into a longer form thing, you can, but it's hard to like sit down and like write a full length. And also people don't, it's hard. I love reading still, like books and things, but people don't, it's hard. People these days, there's the attention spans and stuff. They'd rather, I think, get things in no pun intended, but bite-sized chunks,
Yep.
So like you could release it on LinkedIn or Medium or any of these things. And just to even get them out there, even if no one reads them, you're just like, oh, I got it out,
I think that's really a great call out. That's something that could be actionable real quickly and easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm also falling into this sort of routine now where I'm being called upon to do media things for the company, and I think I will have some opportunity to, over time, once I develop this sort of media kind of routine and media connections a little bit more deeply, to actually have some stages to present these types of ideas on. Right now, it happens to always be on AI and utilization of AI and the tech and all this kind of thing. But eventually, I expect that I'll have some stage to be able to bring some of these concepts to larger groups, which I think is something that I have a lot of interest in, a lot of excitement about that. And Camden knows that we've talked about this at LinkedIn.
I have another question for you, Gordon. And then I have a couple of summary points from what we've talked about. You know, when you referred to like being in dentistry and being in ortho, you were talking about this like underlying anxiety that you
Yep.
had. Do you
Yep.
still have that?
No, it's
Good
all
question.
gone. It's all gone, completely gone, 100%.
Mhm.
And that was the 90-day period during that, what I described as the catharsis or the healing period, either way you could think about it, of getting out of the clinical work. My relationship with my wife is better today than it ever has been. I don't have emotional turmoil at all. I feel zero sense of responsibility and weight being on my shoulders. To the contrary, what I feel like as being a part of a team where I can physically and visibly see that my contributions are changing dental health for people. I feel this overwhelming sense of achievement and fulfillment.
Mm,
It's amazing.
beautiful.
It's amazing. And I never sense that, short of, the occasional interaction where a patient said, "Hey, thank you so much for helping me with a toothache," or that kind of thing. What I think was, in my experience in clinical dentistry, there weren't enough of those feel-good moments. I wish there had been more of those feel-good moments. I was always consumed with, why does it cost so much? I hate going to the dentist. Why does it hurt? You're not as good a dentist as the dentist around the corner. Heard that this dentist, it resonates, doesn't it?
My favorite is you drive up in your car. They're like, "Oh, I just paid for that car." I hate that.
Absolutely, or the vacation.
I hate
or all those
that.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's tough, and
We
I think
bought your building. I'm like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
you did not.
sometimes I wanted to say, to these people, we're people too.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what am I supposed to walk here?
Yeah, no, it was tough, and I think that we all share those sentiments that we wish there were more of the feel good moments, and so it was weird stepping back from being sort of the leader and the one that's responsible for everything to becoming a cog in a wheel.
Yeah.
A team member in a team with a greater vision became part of that answer. In my case, it became, I don't have to feel like I'm carrying the entire load. Now my contributions, even though they're fractional, as being part of a team, I can see them and view them and feel them as being really fulfilling.
I think
Mhm.
the fulfillment's a huge thing. You got to wake up and feel like what you're doing. And
Yeah,
also just what you're doing. You're just doing something you enjoy. So flat out.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the message, I think, you're probably going this direction, Cameron, is that I think we have to, Camden.
We'll just give you like a bell every
I think you
time.
just change your name. It'd just be
Yeah.
easier to.
Yeah,
Cam,
Could you
it works for both.
just
Cam.
drop that D, No, I think that message becomes, I think that we do have to listen to our inner voice. I think we have to listen to the guy on the shoulder. I think we have to not just listen, but contemplate the message that's being delivered through our emotional being, right, through our body, and understand where we are. That doesn't happen in one setting. It doesn't happen in a day, a month, or even a year. It happens over time. But it's important for all of us, and we all would be well advised, I think, to listen to those voices carefully and consider,
Yeah.
Right.
and I would ask folks to maybe not find themselves in a position that I'm in having a little bit of regret. And what I mean by that is the opportunity cost, where I identified it was years ago. Now I'm out of it, and fantastic. I actually wouldn't do anything different than I've done, because it was just my journey. But what I do think about is, was there any opportunity cost in that time range where I could have been a better version of myself?
Mm-hmm.
I think we all can say that. I mean,
Yeah.
And everybody. I mean, we're always going to look back and say, I could have done better, right? It's it's normal, kind of like human condition. Go ahead, Camden. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. I mean, I was just, as we've talked, like a few pieces that I gathered from it was some of the key pieces being like curiosity, letting your curiosity lead you.
Mm-hmm.
letting your energy be some answer, like you're feeling energized now versus perhaps depleted.
Yep.
Creating space for answers and like really listening to that intuition and having trust, and then maybe ease, like I don't know about you, but like when I am really going in what I think is the right direction, it's like easy, like things are flowing from me, and it feels like energizing. Yeah.
100%. And I think also the other adjective I would describe there would be, and I don't mean it in a spiritual way necessarily, but faith. Having faith.
I know what you mean.
You got to have the ability to, when your wife says, we will be on the streets, how will we put food on the table? When my family says, you're making the grandest mistake that you could possibly make, you've got to have developed some sense of, no, this is so important, I'm going to make this work.
Yeah.
And that's that faith part. You do there's a lot of unknowns when we make these career pivots or these changes in our lives, and it doesn't always work out the way we think it will. In fact, oftentimes it doesn't work out the way we think it will at all. However, there's two sides to that story. It can work out, you can have challenges, or it could work out wonderfully. You don't know which one of those is coming necessarily. You can't plan for it. And I think that one of the biggest fears that I have in life is the fear of not giving something a shot, sitting back in the protective zone because it's a protective zone and going, oh, you know what? This is, it's good. It's good enough. I'm interested somewhere else, but I'm not going to take the shot because this is good enough.
That's one of the biggest, when they interview people, like, not to be morbid, when they interview people on their deathbed, a lot of the time, that is the biggest regret. It's not, no one says, oh, I wish I worked another hour in dentistry, right? Things like that. They say, oh, I regret not trying to be this, whatever your dream was, not even trying, like that's the biggest, it's a fear because it is actually a big regret of people at the end of their lives,
100%. I couldn't agree more. And on that note, what I want to do real quickly, just let me quickly scroll for a second because I'm going to find something for you. I want to, I'm going to do a quick share here.
I think you should be able to share.
Yep.
Okay.
This was about 3.5 weeks ago. Yeah, and so we had a trip to Spain planned, and I was on Google Maps. Again, the word curious comes up, right? I spent a lot of time on Google Earth and Google Maps, just basically learning things because I like to do it, and we're big travelers. And I looked at the tip of Spain, and I thought, my goodness, I'm 60-some years old, and I've never seen the Rock of Gibraltar. And that led to, my goodness, the Sahara is so close. And it led to a change in a trip. We were going to spend all of 10 days in Spain, and it led to this crazy, again, the little guy was talking. You got to go over there and you got to go into this desert and sleep in the desert in a tent and ride a camel. And so we did that. And it was one of the best trips we've ever had. It was amazing. We met beautiful people, experienced a culture we had never experienced before. And I had another chapter to the book to tuck in there. Beautiful. So there's never a no answer. Finally in life, we've gotten to that spot where the answer is always, if you want to do something, go find a way to do it. Don't be scared of doing it. As an aside, one of my best friends who happens to be in ortho camp said to me when he found out about this trip, he said to me these words, make sure you're careful in Morocco. I thought, yeah, that's not me. I'm going there and we're gonna do it no matter what the setting was. And it was, again, a right decision. We had just a wonderful experience and learned things about cultures that we knew nothing about before.
No,
So,
scenery is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like the lighting.
amazing, yeah. Yeah, and the colors are just like that, by the way. I just took that with my iPhone, and that the sand is that color, and then of course the blue background. When you get into the sunrise and the sunset, it's even more poignant than that. So really a beautiful, beautiful place. It's something I had never seen before, even though we've been a lot of places. But I would encourage anybody that ever had an opportunity to touch that, because it's an incredible part of the world.
Mm.
You
Gordon, I'm
actually-
hearing.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Go ahead, Dan.
No,
You can
please.
go, Dan.
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say,
We're fighting over it.
Gordon, I'm hearing so much expansion from you.
Oh, I mean, expansion. You got to be kidding, man. It's been
I'll just
great.
give that theme, you know,
Love
like
it.
of allowing, of curiosity,
Yeah.
of following, and just exploring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of the way I see myself. You know, if I had to paint a picture of me, it would be that. I'm a curious person. In fact, my wife says to me all the time, she's more grounded. She's the at-home person. She wants
You need that.
she loves to travel, but at the same time, she's not a gypsy. I could live a gypsy life or a digital nomad life very, very easily because of that curiosity. And so it leads to a cool place. You know, we're having a lot of fun with it. Thankful for the journey that we've been through, but also I'm always looking every day at what does the next day hold, and what's the next adventure, and you know, how can I learn from it. And I think that the ending of the story for me is going to go like this. I don't intend to cruise into it on the porch in the rocking chair. I intend to crash through the window in a dramatic scene ending kind of thing, and then it's over. Yeah. And I know it was all worthwhile. You know, the journey was worthwhile because I got squeezed every bit of life out of it.
No, that's great. I think that's what you escaped with that that was this beginning of your journey. It sounded like wasn't when you when you were 18 or when you were going to college. It was started pretty much when that guy in the shoulder said you got to even go into ortho was part of the. I mean, that sounds like the real beginning of that journey to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure it was. And but I would just, again, it's almost a circle back, but I think that the lesson is we listen to those voices, we take the cues and act on them sooner than later, because to my way of understanding things, we only get one of these journeys. It's not like there are multiple journeys within our timeline. They're just one of them. And so the ability to take the pivots and to take the fork in the road, as it were, is a blessing that we all actually are given that, right? I mean, you have the ability to make and determine force. So listening to the voices, and I call him the trusted advisor, the trusted advisor, you know?
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, Camden, just to latch, this seems like a pretty good place to end too, but just to add one word to what you were saying before was patience. And I think, I think the guy on your shoulder, what we're talking about is anxiety, right? It's like that anxiety pushing you into something. And I'm actually reading a book about this, but anxiety is basically triggering a fight or flight response, right?
Yep.
So like, if you can mitigate that by just being a little patient, because I think that anxiety just forces you to make a quick decision. Like you were like, it almost forces like a panic, right? You're like, I gotta do something, but I can't leave dentistry. So I'm going to go, I feel like if we just take a step back sometimes and be like a little patient about it and be like, I feel this, it's real. It's a real feeling, but I'm not going to panic about it. And I'm going to say, oh, I can do these things. I'm going to go watch Gordon's video. I'm going to go talk to Cam, I'm like actually, it could actually help you a lot. I actually think that's this. Yeah,
I think that's actually a logical approach to the challenges, right? Of that anxiety. It's taking it and framing it within a framework of, okay, I have this challenge now, but I also have all of the other things and spokes on the wheel of life, right? This is only one part of what makes up my experience in my life. It may be a very important one, but it's only one. So I think that's a great point and a great call out, Dan, that irrational decision making is not something that should flow from being in a position like this.
Yeah.
More to the point, let's be patient with it. Let's analyze a situation. Let's be curious. Let's think about it a bit, and then come to something that, even if it's over time,
Right.
is a position that, to Cam's point, we might find ourselves flowing into, lucking into, in my case, lucking into, or just kind of evolving into the right spot.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I think a lot for me is that I believe is dropping into the body. Like it's like quieting the mind, being in that more relaxed space where you can hear that voice, but it's not necessarily the anxious voice at that point.
Yeah.
And to me, I know I found clarity in those moments, like in a certain type of therapy session where I was just in such a relaxed state and there was a very loud voice speaking about my business, and it felt different than the anxious, like, ooh, now get out of this.
I think culturally too, we're at a different place. Like, Gordon, when you started to go through this, we're talking 20 years ago. I mean, I don't know how it sounds like plus years ago. Even times have changed a lot. Like now it's a lot more, just the lifestyle people are different now. Now it's more accepted to have a more varied career, doing these things. Like when we were younger, even when I was, I'm probably a little younger than you, not much, but it was just a different thing. Like it was like, who am I to like just drop what I'm doing? Like I had this privilege of being a dentist and having this position. Like, you go through those things because of the timing of where you are too. Now it's a little more, we can do these things a little more.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. I hadn't thought about that, but you think about the concept of the nuclear family. Let's go back to the 50s, right? Dad works for GMAC, right, in the plant, and he's worked there all the way through for retirement, and they would never consider any type of changes like this because of the impact on the family, the impact of earning capabilities, so forth and so on. Nowadays, I mean, we've got these things, right? And we work here. We carry around a business in our pocket. I'm working today. I'm not at home. I'm working today. I don't have a physical office. The company I work in now doesn't have a physical office. 150 employees that are remote, and so there are opportunities now that present themselves to us that you're right, didn't have before.
I even tell my kids are college, and my son's a senior, but high school, but they're college age, and they're like, it's a different even thought process now for these younger kids too, because they're like, just like to your point, like the idea used to be, I can work at this one company for my whole career and make a career out of that. Mm-hmm. Now it's like they don't even know the career they go into might not even exist yet.
Yeah,
things are happening. So I mean, did you imagine that you'd be working in AI? I mean, letters didn't even it was
I mean, unbelievable, and it was the strangest thing how the opportunity came together at just the right time. And to Cam's point about hearing the inner voice and then being relaxed enough to be able to flow into the situation is, wow, I'm at this seminal moment, if you will, in technology where some of the stars are aligning, right? And I this is a great time to grab the ring. This is a great time to make that decision and make a change, and so all of that I think plays into it. But that does take being aware, being self-aware first and foremost. Mm-hmm. It takes it takes each of us being observant of the things around us. I think that's very important. In other words, I'm not just a dentist in the oral cavity.
You're open.
Yes. I'm not just concerned with what my P&L sheet of my dental practice says, right? I'm not just concerned with hitting the next level of production and the next level of contribution to my 401k and my IRA, or buying the next house at the lake. Whatever the setting is, it's being aware that the world is much broader, and there are far, far more opportunities of all different types than we can even imagine.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's
yeah.
mind-boggling how much, right?
No, it really
Oh.
allows you to be your own entity these days. Like you can be like you don't have to be part of GM to be something. Like resources allow you to just be. You could be Gordon, the guy who does this and is
Yep.
known for doing this and has a career doing this. And like it's kind of cool that life is it's evolving. The world's evolving. It's a positive. That's a positive attribute of technology. Whereas we can all find the negatives of AI, but it's going to open. We can't even imagine what future is going to be with AI and everything. I can't even imagine this stuff. Sorry, Camden, you were going to say something.
No, I wasn't.
you-
I was just bobbing my head. No. No, I think, just sounds like you had your eyes open, you were looking around, you were, being aware of what opportunities were there, like you said. And
How do you think, if you have a second, how do you think AI or Overjet AI specifically? I don't know a ton about. I know the company. I've learned a little bit. I don't know a ton about it. Like, how would you describe how it's going to impact orthodontics, I guess specifically, but how does it impact the lifestyle, the career of an orthodontist? Like, how does it impact if I'm an orthodontist? How does AI, or a dentist? How does it affect me? How does it make my career easier? Or generally.
So let me give you a quick historical rundown on it first, because this will help you with the background and the context. So the company was founded in 2018. We are the number one. We're the leading dental AI company. We have had the most investment, largest investment ever in dental AI was with us. We just recently went through the Series C funding, and precious few startups ever make it to Series C. The numbers are infinitesimally small. So we started on a process called computer vision, and the founding story goes like this. Our founder, Warda Enam, is from MIT. She was a postdoc at MIT, had gone to a dentist for a checkup during her postdoc time. She didn't have any money, like all postdocs, right? Go to the dentist, get a checkup. The dentist says you need to have some work done. She had change of her insurance plan. That led her, sort of by accident, to my boss, Chris Balaban, who was practicing in Boston at the time. She sits in his chair for a checkup 6 months later. Says, here are the x-rays. Look at the x-rays. Chris says, you're in pretty good shape, not bad. No, you need to have a couple fillings. Okay. She sat up in the chair, straight up, became indignant. How could it be? I don't really understand this at all. I don't understand. He had just met her. Well, you're overall in pretty good shape. You just need a couple fillings. It's simple. I was at the dentist 6 months ago, and the dentist told me I needed 8 fillings.
Yeah.
It's the story of standardization, right? And from that, they took it to, after some conversations, took it to Harvard Innovation Lab. And then we were founded out of there, got funding. And essentially, Warda had been doing her postdoc on computer vision on pathology slides, using AI algorithms to read pathology slides. And so the question became, can we do the same thing over in the dentistry side to read x-rays and bring objectivity to dentistry where it doesn't exist? And I have some data, some really disturbing data on how bad we are as clinicians in dentistry with that standardization thing, right? And it goes like you show one x-ray to 10 dentists and you'll get about 14 different treatment plans, right?
Right. It's true.
It is. And but the founders were really smart people here. They understood that to be able to make this company go, like any startup, you need to find some revenue somewhere. And so we started on the insurance side of the equation, the payer side of the equation. So they began to build algorithms to essentially do the same thing, but to do it on dental claim submissions. In other words, the x-rays that we send to the payers to determine whether they're going to pay for a crown or scaling a root plane or whatever.
Basically saves the company money. They don't have to have somebody just looking at all the x-rays, and standardize at least from their side, I guess.
Yeah, bingo. That's exactly right. And so that happened in 2018. We got good traction, and up through 2021 or so, we were doing that for the biggest logos in the dental insurance world. And we do that for most of the large logos currently. That's where most of the revenue from the company is coming today. And we are seeing that the dental insurance side is seeing tremendous cost savings. and the numbers are astronomical actually. And they get the benefits of efficiency. They run the thing through quicker. It's automated. A person never looks at it. If it meets their criteria, it's approved. The payment goes back. Providers get it in 7 to 10 days as opposed to 4 to 6 weeks. And they don't have to have as many claims reviewers to do that. Now, they still have human claims reviewers for where an AI read on the stuff doesn't approve the claim. It goes into human review. Now, fast forward to 2021-22, we developed the practice product. That's the side I work on, where we're using the same stuff, but selling it to DSOs and clinics, providers, stuff like that. Now, that's the context and the background, right? The rate of growth is astronomical. Where it's headed toward a concept of the AI, not driven, but the AI-centric dental practice. Every single piece, every task, every system within dental practice will be affected. Not tomorrow, but every piece of it will. And that goes from screening, assessment, diagnosis, treatment planning, case complexity scoring, predictive analytics on outcomes. Everything you can think about from a clinical perspective will be touched by artificial intelligence. And it already is being. I'm working on some things right now that are wildly ahead of where we were a year ago. Take it over to the business side of the practice. Scheduling, patient communication, data analytics within the practice. Every piece that you can imagine will be touched by AI. And what's important about it is that it isn't just going to be touching the dental practice and the clinic. It connects, and this is what our vision and mission is all about. It connects the three parts, the three really important stakeholders: the payer, the provider, and most importantly, the patient. We're not far from having something called real-time adjudication, where we're going to have a platform right at the dental chair that says, Mrs. Jones needs scaling and root planing in 4 quadrants. Here's what her benefits are. Here's what the level is. The treatment will be approved for payment because we've done an AI read on the pre-treatment diagnostic data. And the clinician will be able to submit that and get paid in real time at the time the treatment occurs. And we're not even that far from that.
That was going to be my question: is like, how far are we away from just treatment? Analyzing, consuming all the data and then spitting out a treatment plan. It sounds like it's on track for that.
Yeah, that's where we are, and it's going fast. It's going to be to that statement I made earlier, the most transformative change that we will have ever seen in dentistry. All 3 of us are going to see it because it's happening fast, and it is not unlike. In fact, I think it's exactly like, quite frankly, the internet. The internet revolution, right? The internet revolution came to society, and who among us, no matter who you talk to, doesn't interact with the internet every day?
We're doing it right now.
Yep. Same thing with artificial intelligence. And it'll apply to everything we do in life, and certainly everything that we do in dentistry. So exciting time. And I think an opportunity to standardize, to use objective measurements, to do better for patients, and do better for providers, and do better for payers.
It's amazing.
Who doesn't want
great.
that, right?
Thank you for sharing that.
It's a great narrative, and it's also great. It's great to hear positive. A lot of time you hear negativity coming from development of these things, like all the ways it's gonna negatively impact us. But this is such a positive thing because it's not replacing the knowledge we have. It's not replacing it might replace people in the practice, that kind of thing, but administrative tasks. But as far as it's just enhancing the dentist and enhancing the patient's the result of their outcomes, which is ultimately our goal with all these things.
I heard a concept on that the other day. Someone said that it actually is going to expand the economy. Now, if people talk about drawing down jobs and things like that, yes, jobs will go away that are being replaced by automation for sure. But I think the more important detail there is that the economy will expand because you take mundane tasks that humans are doing now, you free up the human to do things that require human creativity,
Right, right, right.
higher level processes, right? And when you do that, you expand economically. So I think that it actually is going to have the effect of expansion as opposed to any contraction. But like remember when cars came around, they had horse and buggies. The cars are going to kill everybody. They're going to be dangerous, right? My father, bless his heart, he died this past Christmas. He said to me, I'm certain this social media, Facebook stuff is going to be the ruination of society, you know? And yet we find at every iterative point in the tech journey that it makes our lives better. Although we have humps in implementing and putting it in, it ultimately makes our lives better.
Yeah. I heard a great, was I reading it or something? I think Warren Buffett was making the comparison too. He said, if you talk to someone in 1880, about all these things that are coming, like they had no concept of what the Industrial Revolution would, the Industrial Revolution had its negatives too, but obviously we're where we are today because of the Industrial Revolution happening then, but they couldn't imagine what it brought.
Yeah.
And would you say people are worse off now than they were before than 1880 in terms of health and where we are? It's not even close. So it's like that comparison. And I think people just you don't know what's coming. You just don't know.
And because of that unknown, there's fear and skepticism, right? That's a natural human reaction to change. And we see that a lot because, dentistry is a small shop, as it were. It's a very, very small segment of the economy. There just aren't that many of us, even though it touches all of us, in one way or the other throughout our life. There is a lot of skepticism. Part of what I do actually is this demystifying kind of communication I think it's part of my mission to talk to my colleagues and the dental profession at large about what this is and what it's not. There's still this concept of what's the Terminator coming for my job that's going to take over my treatment plan and ultimately my treatment with a robot. Okay. Mm-hmm. But it's so far from that, it's not even funny, right? But it is going to free us up time-wise and sort of workflow-wise in many cases to be able to provide a much higher level of patient care, patient communication, patient outcome, and access to care for patients. All of those things are good things. There's not a one of those that's not good.
I think the AI is happening. So the one thing that's true, and I think they underestimate, is the speed of AI's development. Yes, I think I think the internet took even though we're feels like, oh man, it took over. It did take over the internet, but it still took a good decade before or more before it really people were like, internet, nobody's gonna put their credit card on the internet, and like that was very slow, right? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. But AI is like, even the creators of the AI have underestimated how quickly we've got. We're almost at what they call generative AI and all that. It's smarter than an adult human already.
It's amazing, yeah.
So, and they weren't expecting that. They thought it would take 10 years. It took 4 years. So they don't even know. They don't even know. So it's interesting.
The compute power now, we're just in a different era with compute power, right? And it all depends on compute power. AI is all based on compute power. And so we have so much more at our disposal in terms of those resources and the ability to collect those up and immediately deploy them, right? And get any idea running just almost overnight. And so you start stacking those things up on one another and it just takes off.
Yeah. I do some thesis-based investing and things like that, and like AI, I pretty much, everybody likes to kind of hone things down to like one small equation, and I think AI is exactly what you said. I think AI equal whatever. I even wrote it down. I think AI equals data, because it's all about the data storage. Like, where are we going to store these things? Like, those are our limitations: data plus compute, which you've talked about, plus energy. Like they said, the amount of energy we're going to need, we're not even close to needing the amount of electricity we're going to need for what we're talking about with all the AI, even just for self-driving. It's like we need so much more energy than we even have capacity to right now. So those are more our limitations, I think, than anything else.
No, I couldn't agree more. I totally totally on that. But it's exciting too, right? Because we don't know where it's heading specifically. We have general ideas. Watching it and seeing it happen is pretty cool.
Yeah, and you really are seeing it in real time, which is kind of strange.
I'm
know?
taking up another initiative. You guys wouldn't be surprised to know this. I'm actually going to do a master's in AI governance and policy. I'm getting ready to start on that in August. And I'm real excited about that because I think that brings up what you're talking about right now, which is how do we actually manage this as a society? How do we not allow it to get out of the lanes that we need to keep it in? How do we prevent inappropriate use? How do we avoid algorithmic biases? All of those kinds of things I'm fascinated by. So I'm going to start some study on that in August.
That's really interesting.
Where are you doing that program, Gordon?
Purdue.
Okay.
Purdue online. Yep.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
So excited about that.
So when I did my master's in public health a few years ago, one of the classes I did was informatics, which was, you know, the data, how data is managed and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
AI wasn't even mentioned. Wasn't even
right.
There was not even the letters AI were not even in there, and it was just that was only, you know, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, something like 3 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. So now even that everything there would be completely different. They were talking about like HIPAA and like how you store data. Now it's crazy how fast things are moving. It really is.
It really is. I drive a Tesla, and now I've been watching through the iteration on self-driving and stuff like that. And it's still not obviously autonomous, and it's not safe to be autonomous yet, but it's incredible how good it is in such a short period of time. I was driving in downtown Atlanta the other day and turned it on. Every corner perfect. Traffic management perfect. Lane changes perfect. It knew what was behind me, in front of me, everywhere. And then I think about how much data has to be crunched to be able to even come close to do something like that. Yeah.
In real time.
Yeah.
You know, Tesla is interesting because I always look at Tesla as like you know, everybody's talking about, oh, there's other car companies, this and that. Like, they are not a car company. I mean, they are a data company. They're a robotics company. They're all these other things. They're like, being a car company they're the farthest things from. I have a Tesla. I got it in 2018. So I've had it for like 5 years. Still great. Still works fine. Everything's good. But it's one thing that's cool. It does upgrade, right? You have it. So like it'll wake up in the morning and it'll upgrade itself and stuff like that. So it is really interesting, how all this kind of starts to impact your actual real life in a very real way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the technology we're talking about is literally intertwined in our lives already without us even knowing it. You think about Spotify and Siri. It's everywhere. Anywhere you look, we're already using these tools. It's just that it hasn't been allowed. There hadn't been enough time yet for it to infiltrate every little piece of our lives, and it hasn't been deployed on the scale that it ultimately will be. But it's certainly going to change our dental practices, and I think it's a great time to be a dentist. I think it's a cool time to be able to have these things available to us.
You know, Camden, if you want to jump, I'm hijacking here a little bit, Camden. If you want to jump in.
No, I actually have to run because I have to get my kids.
All right. One last
you guys should finish. You guys, I can hop off and you guys can keep going.
Well, one thing I'll say is one question I have. This might be a good place to kind of sum things up. Is how does all this impact the average dentist? Like when will, like you always say, like dentist. I always think of dentistry as a very relationship based profession. It really is. Doctoring really is a person to person thing.
100%.
At what point does that ever get taken over by AI in some way?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
Okay.
Never. There will always be a play, and a number of reasons for that we all know, because AI doesn't have empathy. AI is only objective.
Well, right now it doesn't. Right now it doesn't.
Never going to happen. Not empathy. We're protected in that realm, but I think that it becomes a valuable teammate. That's the concept that I use when I talk about it. And in the realm we're talking about today, in its current form, another adjunctive tool to make a diagnosis. I have a slide in one of my presentations that shows a mirror, an explorer, a set of gloved hands, a set of loops, a dental x-ray, an air water syringe, maybe a CBCT slice or something like that, and a block that says artificial intelligence. You get it. We're positioning Another tool to help us be better versions of ourselves. I said that at the beginning. Better versions of ourselves, right, is what this tool ultimately is going to do for healthcare. There will be a time, just like with the internet, where we won't be able to practice without this. It'll be FOMO for a while. The guy around the street's got it. They're doing really good things with it. I hear good things. And for some reason, he's more successful financially in his practice than I am. And that, the scanner analogy, we all adopted scanners and all that stuff. Same thing will happen here. There will be the earlies, the mid-earlies, the mids, the mid-lates, and the lates.
Typical S curve, yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
Mhm.
But
Cool.
this has been awesome, guys. I've had a hell of a lot of fun doing this. It's
Really
amazing.
appreciate your. I think we stole a bunch of your time. We appreciate it, Gordon. Thank you very much.
We should
So
do it
many
again.
good things in this.
We should do it
we
again.
could go
Yeah.
a bunch of different directions. I can already tell. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
You guys keep me in the loop and let's do it again, man. I love doing this kind of stuff.
Will do.
Sounds good. Thanks,
Take
Great
care.
to see you guys today.
Take care, Gordon. Be good. Thank you. Nice
See y'all
meeting you.
later.